Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Back in 1980, I was 8 years old and a particular film came out that caused a heck of a stir, and it was mainly because, well, I was 8 at the time. So in elementary school, everybody was talking about the fact that it contained an awful lot of naked people in it and that there was sex in it. So of course, elementary school, middle school age kids are going to talk about these things. It was a big deal, this film, and I've heard about it so many times over the decades. And of course, at 8 years old, my parents weren't going to let me watch it. And this was during the age of VHS tapes were just coming into play. And my family wasn't going to put their hands on a copy of this because I came from a very conservative religious family. And I just never had a reason to see it, never had an opportunity to see it. And recently, it came across a recommendation in one of my YouTube feeds of all the crazy things. I have no idea what I was watching that would have got that onto my feed, but it did. And I thought to myself, I've never seen that film before. I really ought to take a look at it 45 years later and see what the big deal was about. So here we go. Okay, so I've watched the film, and yeah, I can see why there was controversy back in 1980. There were some things that I can absolutely see would have got the censors upset. But I didn't find those things offensive or upsetting. It was actually something else that I thought was a little offensive, not the least of which, this film was really stupid. Let me explain. And I'm going to save the controversy part for at the end. I've got to just set the scene by telling you what the plot was. The plot was this. These two young kids are traveling with a guardian across the ocean. I guess this was the South Pacific. I say that only because I know the film was filmed on a private island in Fiji. Fiji, of course, being in the South Pacific. So they're going on this boat. For whatever reason that is never clearly explained, the ship starts going down. The ship has some kind of mechanical problems. So one of the crewmen takes the kids, get them in a lifeboat, and they sail off to this island. They're alone with this guy. And they start to build a hut. They start to build, a little home for themselves. They start to develop, I guess, a culture, if that's the word. But they find a way to survive on this island. Eventually, the drunkard of a sailor drinks himself to death, and the kids discover the body, and they get traumatized. And the kids, of course, grow up. They're on the island for what I'm guessing is about 10 years, maybe 15 years. We're never given dates, we're never given ages, so really not sure. And during their time on the island, as they're growing up, of course, they're going to go through puberty, and they're going to have to explore their own bodies. They're going to explore the bodies of each other. And of course, one thing leads to another. She gets pregnant and has a child. And then for the craziest of reasons that has to do with a shark, they end up in a lifeboat sailing away from the island accidentally, where they are rediscovered by the very same guardian on what appears to be the very same ship, and everything ends happily. They didn't put much work into this screenplay. They really didn't. They put almost no work into the plot, which makes you wonder, why the hell did they write this or, make this film to begin with? And I think there is a reason that they did. But I'm going to overlook the really obvious plot problem in this film, where they are rescued by the same ship that supposedly was sinking that made them get off the ship. So what the hell happened to make them get off this ship? Well, I have an interesting theory about that. The drunken sailor who rescues them, very, very early in the film, like within the first 2 or 3 minutes, he is caught leering at the young girl in a way that I found, quite frankly, overtly sexual. We know that this guy keeps pictures of naked women in his cabin because the kids discover those pictures, and I'm not a prude. I'm not going to be surprised that a sailor had pictures of naked women. And I said pictures of naked women. I didn't say they were engaged in sexual acts, because they weren't. And I should point out that in the United States, the Supreme Court has already ruled that simple, non-obscene nudity is a protected form of free speech. It's just people being naked, and that shouldn't be offensive. I am not one of those people who thinks that just because someone is naked that there must be an overt sexual intention of this person or a meaning behind what they're doing. Sometimes people are just naked, and I don't find the human body something to be offended by. Having said all that, this sailor has these pictures, and when the ship gets into some sort of trouble, this guy who was leering at the children grabs the children, puts them in a boat, and he rescues them. He doesn't make any attempt to rescue anybody else. Nobody else gets off this boat except this man who was leering at the girl and these children. So read into that whatever you will. As far as we can tell, he actually never did anything with the children on the island except they built a house. Now, that's another plot point that I think is sort of ridiculous in this film. In the beginning of the film, they hobbled together this hut. Now, keep in mind, as far as I can tell, they don't have any tools, no specialized tools. And this young kid is not going to have, the boy in particular, is not going to have any particular skills at building. I don't know that the sailor did, but somehow they go from having this falling apart shack that looks like a gentle breeze would knock it over. Toward the end of the movie, they're living in something that, my gosh, you would expect to find on Malibu Beach and maybe rent out to people as a B&B. How did they build this thing? Why did they build it so big? And why did they build such a huge deck? What did they go out and have barbecues on this deck with friends? Ridiculous. Another ridiculous plot point is that after they've been there for like 10 years, they discover this group of cannibals living on the island. How did it take you 10 years to figure out that these people were here? And I'm not even, it's a ridiculous plot point. So having said that, I think that the screenplay in this thing was really bad. I think the directing was really bad, which again makes you wonder, why did this film become so popular? Well, I'll get to that in a minute. The next thing I would like to talk about is the cinematography. If this film has one redeeming quality, it is absolutely the cinematography. They had some absolutely beautiful shots inside this film, but not just of the island, but underneath the water too, underneath the surface of the water, in the water. Why is that so difficult to say? And there were some absolutely lovely shots. What did those shots have to do with the plot? I don't know. Nothing that I could tell. So I'm glad it was in there. It was pretty. I will even point out that this film that I think wasn't all that great actually won an Oscar, actually won an Academy Award for the cinematography. Now, there were some other awards that this film won, but they're not the kind of film awards you want to brag about because, yeah, Brooke Shields, the young woman in this film, she won 2 Worst Actress awards. The film also won an award for the worst on-screen duo. It also won an award for having the worst soundtrack for a film. In fact, it was called Obtrusive, the most obtrusive soundtrack. So, oh, this poor film took a beating. So again, why was it so popular? Well, let's get into that. I'm going to start with the least offensive thing that I can say, and that is that the acting in this film was atrocious. It was, oh my God, it was like, oh my gosh, I can't even compare it to anything. It's so bad. It's like you literally grabbed a couple of high school kids, asked them to take off all their clothes, and then here's a script, act out the lines as you know, we don't have time to practice. We don't have time for you to get acting lessons. Just do it. Oh, it's bad. Let me give you a couple examples right here.
That is not fair. I don't keep any secrets from you. I tell you everything. Everything. You're really acting silly lately, Em. Always saying dumb things like that. Always looking at me funny. Em, I know you don't like to talk about it, but don't you ever wonder what really happened?
I don't want to know what happened. This is where we live. This is our home, now and forever.
No! I could never live here forever with just you. I don't even like you.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
Now, I let you watch those clips full with sound because there's no amount of description on my part is going to express to you just how bad the acting was. And by now, I'm thinking that you agree with me. So let's start to move into the controversial things. I mentioned bad acting. There is a scene where the young girl, Emma, finds Richard masturbating out on a rock. Now, he gets offended. His emotions go from 0 to 100 when he is discovered by her doing this.
Where are you going?
And he's doing it in a way that makes you think that he's ashamed of what he's doing.
What are you doing?
What do you want? Just leave me alone!
Now, here's where I have a problem with that. It didn't really show anything, so the scene doesn't offend me. But not only does it not offend me, but I should also point out that I think it is something that would happen on an island. It is something that would be a point of curiosity for the young man. So I can see why it was in the plot. I don't have a problem with that. The problem I have is he grew up with this young girl, basically naked together for the last 10 years. And he suddenly feels shame for this. I don't know why he would be ashamed of doing this in front of her. Where did this sense of shame come from? Because I don't know who would have taught it to him. Nobody was there to teach him that shame. And it just doesn't make any sense to me. Fast forward to another scene where this young girl is in a lake or in some kind of pond or whatever, and she discovers that she's bleeding. It appears to be her first menstrual cycle. And when he comes over to ask her, hey, are you okay? What's going on? Again, her emotions go from 0 to 100, and she starts screaming at him, go away, go away.
Go away, don't look at me. Please, just go away.
This is the only other human being on the island. Why would she be ashamed of this instead of being worried or scared and then tell the one person who's there to help her, hey, I'm bleeding and I don't know why? Because believe me, she can't know why. Nobody is there to explain it to her. And certainly when she was on the ship, she was too young for anybody to have that kind of conversation with her. So again, where is the shame coming from? I can understand fear. I can understand maybe the embarrassment of bleeding in front of somebody, but to be this ashamed that you start screaming, I don't find it natural. I just don't like it at all. They, of course, eventually discover their sexuality together, and there is no one else on the island for them to get to know, so to speak. And so she eventually becomes pregnant and has a baby. The film does not show her at any time being worried about, why is my belly swelling up? Why am I getting fat? There's none of this. It's just she's fat. I say fat. She's carrying a child, so she's heavier, she's bigger. And then suddenly she goes into birthing pains and the baby's there, everything's happy, hunky-dory, and that's all the exploration of that. So I don't think that this film was taking these issues seriously. I think a genuine art film or a film looking for critical praise would have explored those issues in a little bit more detail and much more sensitivity and given it much more thought than it received. So now let me jump to the part that kind of bothered me, but not for the obvious reason. From the beginning of the film, these young children are running up and down the beach naked, and they do an awful lot of swimming naked. Now, I live in Germany. It's pretty common here. In Europe, nudity is treated completely different than it is in North America. But that was a lot of underwater scenes of these children with full nudity. No, I don't consider it pornographic. I don't have a problem if they were doing this artistically, you know, if they were taking the issue seriously, but it wasn't just a scene of nudity that pushed the plot forward. Instead, it was just, my God, enough already. I got the point. I got the point. Move on. Eventually, the director does move on, but then we're treated to an awful lot of them swimming naked as young adults. And again, for artistic purposes, I don't have a problem. It was just the point that, my God, it went on too long. It just kept going and going and going. Enough already. I got the point. Now, back when I was 8, all this might have been funny and it might have really had my attention. And by the time I was 12 or 13, maybe it would have, struck some emotions in me. But here I am 53 and it's like, my God, I got the point, move on. So then you think you'd had enough of them swimming naked or running around naked, but then we get to the point that they have the baby and now they take the baby swimming and they're all naked and the scene just goes on and on and on. And then they had more scenes where Christopher Atkins, the young man in the movie, where he was out on the beach playing with the child naked, and then they were all naked together and they were playing on the beach, all three of them, which brings up the point. If they're completely comfortable being naked with one another, why are there significant points of the video where she's covering her lower body with a loincloth and he is as well? Because if they don't have a problem being naked in front of each other and spending the whole day naked, why did they wear loincloths in major portions of the film? That didn't make sense to me. So, all in all, I feel like I wasted an hour and a half of my life watching this film. Again, I can see why in 1980 it was a big deal, especially among teenagers or young people. I get it. I can see why conservatives would get upset because of the nudity, and of course there are children that are nude in it. But I do not believe that the nudity was overtly sexual, so I don't have a problem with it. I can see where it might push the plot forward in certain instances. I just think it went on far too long, and that is my complaint with the nudity. I got the point. And it almost seemed like this was an excuse for the director to just make a nudist film, because the plot was paper thin. It was just, overall, I would not recommend you watch this film. I wouldn't recommend that you spend an hour and a half doing this unless you just like watching people swim naked. In which case, if that's what you're into, then you can just go to a pool in Germany or in France or the Netherlands and see it live. It just doesn't make sense to me. So that is my review. I hope you enjoyed it. Would absolutely love to read the feedback on this. So please go to the comments below and comment, because maybe you think my opinion is off the wall and I'm crazy. If so, let me know. Or maybe you agree with me. Let me know. When you comment telling me whether you think this is this, that, or the other, do me a favor, please, and put in there where you're from, because not only am I interested to know where you're from, I'd like to know what perspective your culture brings to this review. So thank you so much for spending the time with me. I really appreciate it. I really, really do. And I hope to see you on the next one in the near future. Hopefully it's not going to be a long time before the next one comes out. Until next time, my friends, take care. Cheers.